Hi, my name is Ian Heller, and you're listening to What If I'm Right? Today, what I want to talk about is, well, why we can't just get along. I know, it almost feels like, why can't we just all love each other and have a kumbaya moment? Um, that's just like so not real. Um, that's a fantasy, and I'm not even sure it's a good goal. But there's got to be something between kumbaya and some sort of a death match. Because right now, that's what's going on in public, is and in private, quite frankly. Um, we are all listening to each other, to basically uh, an echo chamber of agreements. And as soon as you're in an echo chamber, what you're really knocking out is you're not just hearing other people who agree with you, you are not hearing perspectives that don't. You're not even hearing perspectives that might agree with you in many, many respects, but not everywhere. So, as an example, where I shouldn't even say as an example, my observation, consider it with as much value as you choose. I have found that most people actually agree on most things, particularly when we're talking about value judgments. Most people are not evil. Most people are not angels. Most people are somewhere closer to angels, quite frankly. But when it comes to protecting your own self interest, like your health, your children, your future, you get a little bit closer to being willing to do things that may not be so nice. But that doesn't change the fact that you don't want to be not nice. You're just a little concerned about what might be taken away from you. So rather than looking at our means to an ends, let's talk first about the ends that we share, the goals that we share. I've heard it said that, and I can hardly repeat it without laughing. It's just so ludicrous. I've heard people actually say that liberals would like to see an increase in crime. Like, oh yeah, that's what liberals want. They want more crime. To do what? To increase the amount of money that goes to aid and things like that? Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think that's dumbass stupid. Liberals are not looking to increase crime any more than conservatives want to increase the amount of control, social controls, to the point that we can't do anything. We're so constrained and everybody gets put in prison. That isn't what conservatives want. What we want is something a little bit more in the middle. And I don't mean the mushy middle, the place where everybody can agree because really nobody's saying anything. We can all agree on just pablum. We can all agree on that, except that's not really agreement. That's just non-thinking. So what I propose is not that we start discussing how we achieve our goals, but first, do we share the goals or any sort of the goals, notwithstanding the fact that we're coming from different places? So I don't see life in a polar or in a bipolar fashion, good, bad, yin yang. I mean, I do see it philosophically that there must be some sort of a negative for every positive, a happy for every sad. Yeah, I think that the only way to truly understand what it is to be happy is to understand what it also feels like to be sad. That gives you perspective, it gives you context. But I'm not talking about the world as a bipolar place. I'm talking about a world that is mostly a Venn diagram. You know the Venn diagram stuff you learned in middle school and high school. I don't even know, maybe it was preschool for all of you precocious lads out there. But the Venn diagram is just a whole lot of circles that are overlapping. And the places we overlap, that's the places of agreement, of similarity. And I think the first place for us to start a much more productive um, discussion, discourse, which could be a private discourse, a discussion among people who can't get along well anymore at family outings or meetings or events or affairs. Um, I think what we need to focus on is where we have commonality. We None of us who are not out of their minds wants a lot of crime. That isn't what conservatives, liberals, or people who define themselves differently want. Even crime families, okay, even criminals are not looking for everybody else to be criminals. All they're looking for is to get away with what they want when they act as a criminal, but everybody else is supposed to listen to them. So all they're basically saying is, we make the rules, so we're not criminals anymore. We're doing whatever the hell we want. Just make sure that you do whatever we want to. So the Venn diagram approach basically says we want to live in peace. We want to live with the idea that we're going to wake up in the morning and we're going to feel like we have purpose, like we have opportunity, like we have a reason to live. A lot of that has to do with being productive. Another thing where there is a tremendous amount of silliness about disagreement, the idea that liberals or conservatives want to create some sort of world where we don't have all of our needs are attended to without any work. Well, that's basically, I mean, my cat. Okay, I've got two cats. If you dogs are kind of like this, but they got to get up to go out to go to the to take a walk every once in a while, 2-3 times a day. Cats, everything is brought to them, and you know what? They sleep about 18 hours a day. You know why? Ain't nothing else they got to do. I'm not talking about whether or not they want to do. They don't have to do anything else. They're cats. We're not cats. I don't want to sit here and just look glamorous and pretty and furry and cute, because quite frankly I'm none of those, but it doesn't really matter. I don't want to just sit here and do nothing. That's why I'm doing a podcast. I could do other things right now. I could sleep. Don't want to do something of value, want to do something productive. And you know what, that part of the Venn diagram where we have conservatives and liberals and moderates, that part of the Venn diagram is overlapped by everybody. It really is, just about everybody. There are always kind of weird exceptions on the perimeters, but for the most part, we're talking about most people want to feel good about their purpose. They want to feel productive. They want to feel like there is value to their every breath. When you wake up, there's some reason to wake up and not just go right back to sleep. People who are depressed, something that I have absolutely had a tremendous amount of personal experience with. When you're depressed, you feel, well, what's your purpose? To suffer? Your purpose is to sit around and be sad? So you go back to sleep. You close your eyes. You go into this little cocoon of denial that you're part of the world. If we start with just opening up to what we want to accomplish, I want to have a good job. I want to get compensated appropriately for my job. I'm not talking about being greedy. I know there's a lot of greed out there, but I think that that's just kind of a compensation. It's kind of like, a midlife crisis and you got to get yourself that little sports car. It's like, that's just compensation, man. It means you're getting old and you want something to make you feel young. Okay, so this whole idea, that to be productive means, and to be valued, you need to be compensated in a way that Elon Musk would say, ooh, now that's money. Like, no, most of us don't need that. That's his sickness. I'm sorry. That's crazy. It's just crazy to even want that amount of money, let alone to actually accumulate it. That's a sickness. And it turns into an evil, because then you want nothing to stand in your way, and you will do anything necessary to get to that larger pot of gold, which, quite frankly, you're not going to live long enough to spend even half of. So the first thing, we have to look at those common values. The common values are our virtues as a species. We want to be productive. We want to be well fed. We want to be healthy. We want to be active. We are curious. We want to learn. There are so many things that are natural to what it is to be a human being. Meanness is not actually a natural instinct. It is something that we do that we get in order to achieve something that we feel that we want or need. Meanness? No. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to. If you are, it's because you feel like you're not getting what you deserve and that people are getting in the way and therefore they're inferior. But if you reframe that and see those people as not obstacles but potential, I don't know, collaborators, partners, friends, co-conspirators, if you want to go on the criminal side of things. Yeah, I mean, that actually can change a lot of the way we communicate. So the first thing to try and depolarize our terribly polarized world is, let's talk about our common interests. And let's not try and do it in a way that requires us to get into requires us to get into some sort of a friendship circle with I don't know, Phil Oakes music in the background and a kumbaya moment. You know what? We don't we don't have to go that far. How about if we just acknowledge it's nice to be alive, it's nice to be healthy, it's nice to be productive, it's nice to get smarter, it's nice not to be judged. All those things are nice, and most people would say, yeah, it's nice, I like that. It's nice to get laid. I mean, there are things that are nice, right? It's nice to have sex. It's nice to, I don't know, get into a comfortable altered state. There are so many different things that are nice, and most of those things, we all say, yeah, that's nice. I'd like that. That's part one. Part two, this is the tricky part. This is where the rubber meets the road. What frequently happens is we're not disagreeing about what we want or what we feel we're entitled to. We're really mostly in agreement on goals. It's means to those goals. It's means to ends. That's where there's some serious disagreement. That's where the Venn diagram kind of starts to fall apart and polarize. What are you allowed to do in order to get what you think you deserve or entitled to? And even that, though, can be part of a discussion. You know, you can go back to, that old saying, I think Voltaire said, I would defend with my life your right to swing your fist up to the point of my nose. I think I'm conflating a whole lot of different concepts here. Maybe Emmett will correct me because, hey, what if I'm wrong, right? But we really are capable of determining means to ends that are not polarized. We really are. But what that means is we need to accept that rights on both sides, okay, my right to communicate, your right to be free from being annoyed. Right? You don't want to hear me talk and I want to talk. Well, that's kind of competing rights. You don't want to listen to me and I don't want to shut up. So turn it off. It's really that simple. I won't go to the window and start screaming it out loud, and so that all my neighbors can hear it and know whether they like it or not. Because that, quite frankly, would be kind of rude. That's the extreme. That's me imposing my will on others. On the other hand, you telling me that I can't talk because you don't want to listen? Nah, just find some other place. Don't turn on the podcast. Go somewhere else. Put on headphones. I don't know. There's so many options. So the discussion at that point is finding the Venn diagram overlap where we can agree not to disagree, but on limitations, on constraints, on guardrails. Once we get rid of guardrails, then what we're kind of stuck with is whatever the most powerful person wants. Then we're talking about the power of, the sword over the pen. The pen is not always mightier than the sword. Sometimes you swing a sword and that's the end of it. So the real discussion that we need in public and in private is, to what lengths are we each expected and permitted to go to achieve our goals? That's it. That's the whole thing. I mean, it's one of those things where you say to yourself, okay, if I'm let's go to the big discussion about, the job makers, the job creators versus the job takers, doers. That was big under the Bush administration. As a job creator, it's like, what? Everybody's a job creator. Every time I go to the bathroom, I'm making a job for somebody who's working in the sewage. So there's always plenty of job creators out there, not always clean and pretty. That's not what we're talking about. We've got to get out of the idea that the people who are owning businesses are more important than the people who work for those businesses. We are equally important because we're codependent. Without workers, ain't no production. That used to be the way people saw capitalism. Yeah, capitalism wasn't always just this complete laissez-faire. There was this notion by Adam Smith that there would be a virtuous cycle, that a person who owns a business will understand that the best way to sell more products is to employ more people at a reasonable wage so that they can then go out and buy more products, which will create a virtuous cycle in which more product is created to meet the greater need because there's more money coming into the system. It isn't a one person wins. It's not this a situation where people like the pie is just the same size. It's just a matter of who gets how much of it. We actually increase the size of the pie. That's what Adam Smith, kind of the godfather of capitalism, said would happen if the capitalist is using logic. They will find the value of paying somebody a good wage and paying taxes by coming back and saying, oh, it's gonna come back to me. The taxes that I pay will return to me in the form of not having to replace my tires because of all the potholes in the streets that aren't getting fixed. And so my tires and my wheels are getting destroyed. No, I'll pay taxes, they'll fix the roads, and all of us will avoid or reduce dramatically the amount of tires and wheels that get destroyed. Taxes are essential. They are what enable all of us, and even the wealthiest, even Elon Musk, with all of his vast wealth, would not be able to make a country this size work for him if there were no taxes. It wouldn't, because there are just too many things that are even too expensive for him. That's why we have trillions of dollars that are in our budget and our deficit and our debt. But we have trillions of dollars, in our budget, and he has hundreds of billion dollars in his wealth. That's how big the United States is. That's how big the world economy is. Even Elon Musk would not be able to create a country that would be manageable if he put all of his money into it. Still need a lot more. So that Venn diagram of values, if we truly want to achieve these things for ourselves, then we have to acknowledge that others will also want them. And the good thing about that acknowledgement is that they'll contribute. If everybody is getting value from something at varying degrees, everybody might be willing to contribute. If no garbage gets picked up, wealthy people and poor people are going to say, I think we need to raise taxes. So many people have no idea. When I teach in my sociology classes and law classes for that matter, and I talk about taxes, do you know that the highest tax rate in our history was during a Republican administration, Dwight Eisenhower? 92%. That means after a certain point, I don't know what the income level was, $1 million, $10 million, I don't recall. But, and I wasn't around, so I don't recall because I wasn't there. But I don't know. But imagine 92 cents out of every dollar you earn, you give to the government. And you're still ridiculously wealthy. Where does that 92 cents go to? Well, we have better railways. We have better streets and highways. In those days, they created the national highway, the federal highway system. Oh, yeah. Think about how much construction happened. We're not talking about just right after during the Depression and when Roosevelt came and said, let's do public works projects because that will bring us out of a depression. The 50s, there was no depression. Our economy was going gangbusters. And the reason why, in no small part, was because people were paying a lot of taxes who could afford to, and other people who couldn't afford to do it had good jobs and were able to create demand for the products that were being made by the people who owned these gigantic manufacturing corporations. It's really a simple thing, and we've just gotten so derailed by this polarization. And I blame the people that we put in power, and I blame us for being, well, just simplistic. We want to hear people, if they want to get elected, they have to say, I want to end taxes. Why? Why are taxes bad? I just don't get that. When I started paying a little bit more in taxes and I started, oh my God, Dad, I don't know what I'm going to do. And my dad, he was a financial guy, and he said, Ian, if you're paying more in taxes, that means you're earning more money. You should be happy about that. The government's making some of that money, which is good because now you can take the subway. Now you can, fly and know that there's an air traffic controller who's going to make sure you're safe. There's a lot of things that your money is helping us. It will help us with our armed forces. It will help us at our border. You want safe borders? Me too. And by the way, that's another one that just ticks me off when people say that liberals want open borders. There are a few nut jobs that want open borders. I think they're the same nut jobs that want to get rid of police altogether and get rid of prisons. I think they're out of their freaking minds. There are people who need to go to prison. There are people who need to rush in when there's danger with their guns drawn to protect me because I don't want to do that. We need that. So this whole notion that liberals don't want safe borders, that's nonsense. That conservatives want all black people to be put in prison, that's nonsense. It's just nonsense. Racism is there, and by the way, I have noted, I don't know if it's as many or more or less, but an awful lot of racist liberals as well as an awful lot of racist conservatives. Somehow, hating somebody's phenotype has nothing to do with what political party you're in. Or, whether it's more common in one than the other, it doesn't matter. It just sucks. And there's plenty of people who are racist. So, I'm just tired of all the nonsense of people yelling at each other and we don't have the same values. We do have the same values. Just be quiet for a minute. Let me tell you how I feel, and I'll let you tell me how you feel. And we'll figure out a way to find the means to that end, to achieve those common goals. where the Venn diagram says, okay, that's too extreme on the left, that's too extreme on the right. Let's make sure that we achieve those goals in a way where both sides feel that they sacrifice something, but not too much. Because that's a good bargain. When only one side is delighted and the other one is pissed, that's not a good contract. That's not a good agreement. What you want is both people to feel they did well. They would have liked to have done better, but they did well enough, and the other person says the exact same thing. We got to start talking. We got to stop talking. Stop yelling. We got to start talking. I'm getting so sick to death of all this yelling and stuff. And the way to build an audience online is to just say the most outrageous. I'm sorry, the middle doesn't have to be mushy. It could be really interesting. Let's listen to it a little while. I know you want to listen to all these crazies on the in the extremes. You're just going to get angry and get nowhere. Let's try a little bit more to listen to each other, to talk to each other, to understand each other, to share the values with one another. I know it's a risk, but I don't know. What if I'm right? Thanks for listening. Don't forget to hit subscribe. That's how I become a massive success. If you hit subscribe and you listen and you tell all your friends, well then, I guess I would just simply say thank you. But in any case, I just hope I get you to think a little bit. We're good at thinking. We all are good at thinking. I've seen that. We're good at it. Let's get back to doing it. This is Ian Heller. What if I'm right? Hi, this is Ian Heller, and you're listening to What If I'm Right? As it turns out, my first guest on my maiden voyage show is my incredible wife, Lora. Lora is the founder of a company called Baby Fingers, which will tell you the origin story of that, or she'll tell you that. I'll just be color commentator there. But Laura started a business called Baby Fingers, which uses American Sign Language, teaching infants, toddlers, adults, people who are who have disabilities, all sorts of people whose lives get enhanced by utilizing sign language, either in conjunction or instead of spoken language. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my beautiful wife, Lora. Welcome.
Thank you. So glad to be here with you.
So Lora, I am really interested in the origin story of Baby Fingers. How did it all get started?
Well, you were there, but I'll tell you anyway. So I'm a music therapist and I have a master's degree in deaf education. And my bachelor's thesis was a study of music and deaf culture. And my master's thesis was a pilot program teaching sign language through songs to families with infants and toddlers, basically 3 months to 3 years. And I decided once we had our own kids that I was going to put my research into practice. And I signed from day one, literally like the moment I was able to hold my infants, which with the first one was after you.
Right. Well, they were sewing you up. You had other issues to deal with. Yeah.
Yes, our older son was an unexpected C-section, and Ian got to sing to him and soothe him with his familiar voice because he'd been singing all through my pregnancy, which is something else that I teach about. I'm a professor as well, and I teach about music therapy in the NICU and pre and post birth, and we can maybe talk about that on another show. So from the moment I got to hold my babies, I started signing with them, and we were both singing with them. And I discovered my older son starting to sign just after 6 months old. He was already understanding my signs.
How do you know?
I'll give you a quick story
Okay.
so I know how. So the younger one at 4 months old was being held by a friend who came over to meet him for the first time. He was starting to get hungry. He got irritable, and he was over her shoulder with his head facing that way. So I came behind him and I did the sign for milk, and he immediately calmed down. He knew that was coming. I didn't say a word. I just signed it. Our older one, similar things like that, but a story I love, a memory I love. He was about 5 months old and he was sitting in his tripod position on the floor so as not to fall over with about 5 of his favorite little toys in front of him. And he had one of his little toys was a cow and he loved that cow. And we would sign and say, cow, that's your cow. And so I turned off my voice. I just asked him, where's your cow? And at 5 months old with no voice, just watching me sign, he pushed his little cow towards me. He understood it. And just after six,
No,
yeah,
you go
did
ahead.
you want to? Okay. Just after 6 months old, Ian and I together walked into his room in the morning to do our usual good morning, I love you. And we got to the good morning. And before we could say, I love you, our son did this. And I burst into tears and Ian looked at me and said, why are you crying? Not really surprised because I'm a crier. That said, I said, he just said, I love you. And so we signed good morning. And before we signed I love you, we said, I love you. And he did this again. And that was his approximation for I love you and his first sign. And every time either of us said or signed I love you to him, he did this. And at other moments that were just intimate moments, we saw his little hand doing this. It's incredible. And that was sort of my ticket in to start Baby Fingers.
Yeah, I certainly, well, of course, I remember all of that. And it's really amazing when we think in terms of how speech is approximated. When parents will have their infants who are saying something and it sounds like gobbledygook to everybody else, but the parent understands what they're approximating. And that's no different with sign language. Zeke was doing, here, let's see if we can. So that's I love you. But he did it this way. And actually, a lot of times children do the reverse sign, right? Tell us why that it happens.
So when they see a movement coming towards their body, they tend to mimic that movement coming towards their body. So Zeke, once he got see you later, he had it with a little bit of an attitude, like later, mama. And he would do that later towards him because it was the way he saw it coming towards him. So that copying, that mirroring, that's just another part of the approximation of language. Like when you hear a child say, pick you up, because they hear you say to them, do you want me to pick you up? So it's that same idea.
To me, it just is very reminiscent of Paul McCartney learning how to play guitar left-handed because he was using the mirror to learn his chords. And so it's
Yeah.
the same thing. It's just using the mirror image and approximating that is much easier than it is to then reverse it and then
That's
and
right.
then do it. So it makes sense. There's another
That's right.
story that I really think is very valuable that I would love for you to share, and that's when we went up to your folks. In that, I think it was a 5.5 hour trip that took about 3 days to get there, because of how many times we had to stop. Because well, he was, I guess, a little fidgety to say it, nicely. Didn't we get a ticket on the way up? But anyway, yeah, that might have been another time.
I think that was a different
That
trip.
was a different tip. Okay, so when we got to your folks' house, what happened? Because he was just he would not stop crying. He was screaming, and good screamer. He kept us awake for I think 5 years, 6 years.
So he woke up in their kitchen in his little car seat, inconsolable. And I went through everything. Do you need milk? Does something hurt? Do you want daddy instead? Do you need a diaper change? Nothing. And all of a sudden, he went, "Hmm," which was the way he signed home. It was his approximation of home. And he was maybe 9 months,
I don't even think it was that
maybe.
much. He was not
He might
verbal
not have
really very
been.
much. He would not have
No,
been able to say home.
no, no.
That's
And he did
exactly
it
why.
just with like a sigh. So he
Right.
might have been closer to seven
I think it was
months.
more 4 to 6 months, honestly.
Well, what,
That was our first time
anyway,
visiting. He was not
he was
verbal at the time.
really tiny.
Yeah.
He was just really little.
Yeah.
And
How do you
what's
find out?
different
How
that
do you
they,
get into somebody's mind that they're homesick? Like, if they don't
right.
have that actual word to say, then all you're going to do is go through the usual stuff, as you said before, the
Right.
milk, diaper change, whatever is food, and it's not what he wants, and it's an abstract concept, and this is a
Right.
language that gave him the tool of speaking in an abstract to make an abstract concept real for us.
And that's one thing. If he were able to point to a bottle or,
Right.
something more concrete, but he couldn't. And so we were then able to say, that's right. We're not home. We're at grandma's home, and show him around and show him grandma and be able to help him to regulate, because he was able to say, I'm not at home. What's going on here? Where am I?
And we're able to say, we're not going to be home for a little while, but this is a wonderful, safe, loving space. And the things that might make an infant scared about this new space, we were able, because he was able to communicate with us, we were able to kind of address those because he understood so much more than he was able to communicate. All babies are that
And
way.
that's a really key point. So babies are completely aware of the world around them. Obviously, they don't understand every conversation you're having, but they know what's going on around them. They're sponges, and they know what it is that they need. So if only they can tell you they need a diaper change, or they need milk, or they're hungry, or they're tired, or no, they want daddy instead. And because the oral motor mechanism takes so long to develop, their hands are ready for it. They're stacking cups, they're manipulating things at a much younger age. So the signs give them something that is accessible to them, but it's not just a meaningless gesture. It also does not completely replace English. So I want to just,
Yeah.
as an aside, just explain that American Sign Language is not English words on your hands. It is a completely separate language. But for those of us in North America who use American Sign Language, we are using it in an English speaking family for the purpose of communicating manually, right? That said, the grammatical structure is different. The culture for American Sign Language is deaf culture. It's a very different experience, and we do work with deaf and hearing children. And so the experience there is both provided and experienced differently. That said, for our children who are hearing and who would be developing spoken English, the signs were at that time providing them with the exact word we would be saying without the need to be able to need to have to say it. And something you said earlier, Ian, about the babbling, and parents tend to understand their own children and maybe not other people's children. Something that the sign language can provide, though, is when you're not exactly sure what that ba is meaning right now. If they sign milk for a bottle, if they sign bat, if they sign banana, if they sign book, they can clarify what it is that they're babbling when they have those signs accessible to them.
You just mentioning off the top of your head four different things that they might use ba or ba to communicate. And it's like, okay, so now you have to go through the four and hope that it's one of those four. But this way you can really help them just be a lot more focused in terms of their communication skills. But now you would mention, well, there's a lot that I want to ask, but you've mentioned American Sign Language several times. Now, we both know that there is a thing called baby signs, and this is not that. And there are many reasons why you don't use baby signs. Like, the point of this is not simply to communicate for the first 6 months or 8 months until they can use their mouths. So why American Sign Language versus baby signs, and how will American Sign Language impact, if at all, their ability and decision whether or not to communicate verbally?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So baby sign language just isn't a language. It's babbling in sign, it's manual babbling, and there is research that indicates that infants who are exposed to sign language and also deaf infants who are exposed to sign language babble manually with their hands in very much the same way that hearing infants babble with their voices vocally. That said, if you consider a baby's vocal babbling to be called baby English or baby Spanish, whatever language you speak, do you? It's not another language, it's babbling in English. So there's really no such language as baby sign language. And the philosophy out there that considers itself to be baby sign language uses a combination of made up gestures, and it's not language based. So in incorporating American Sign Language, you're setting up your child for second language learning, which rewires their brain so they can actually more easily learn English or Spanish or French or German or whatever language your family might be speaking or they might be exposed to later in their lives.
So
Because
if I could
it
just
is its
interrupt,
own language.
what you seem to be saying, if I'm not mistaken, is baby signs doesn't help them develop the global understanding of how language works. It's nothing more than a gesture. Like you point at something, you indicate something. It's an indication. It's actually not a language. And so as a result, the wiring that's going on in this baby's brain is not getting the benefit of wiring for a language. And so if I'm if I'm understanding you correctly, by using American Sign Language, or if you're in France or whatever, a language rather than just babbling signs, you're setting your child up for a smoother transition into verbal language because the brain is already wiring for language as opposed to like just indications or just pointing gesticulations.
That's exactly right. So as I said earlier, it's not just a substitution for those words, even though we may be using it in the moment to sign milk rather than say milk. It's setting up a full language. And a couple of examples. So when our son Zeke was, I don't know, 13, 14, 15 months, he and I walked you to the train to say goodbye to you to go to work. I had him in the stroller and we said goodbye to you at the one subway station. And he and I continued walking. And when we got to the next subway station, I see his hands go out in front of him and he signed stop. So I would stop walking and come around to the front of the stroller. Now, before I finish the story, one of the most amazing things about signing with your baby is that you have to be face to face with each other. As you're pushing the stroller, you can talk or sing, and they gain a lot from that. But when you're face to face with them, they see how your lips move. They see your facial expressions. They get so much more of the language, which is important in both spoken and sign language. What do you look like when you're happy? Whether you're signing or saying it, right? But with the signs, you have to be face to face. And in this world of technology, when we're always so on our phone or just busy doing other things, we forget about that face-to-face time with our child. So he signed stop. I came around to the front of the stroller so we could see each other sign. And he pointed to this other subway station and then signed, Daddy, train, work, which is a full ASL phrase. And that was right. Daddy took the train to work and we were at a different subway station to say goodbye to him and he made that connection. How would I have known that? At that age, he could not have said it. Now, I want to back up to one quick thing you said, Ian, in terms of you said verbal. That's very typical to indicate that somebody who is not speaking is not verbal. And I like to separate as a deaf educator and as an early childhood educator, somebody who is, whether they're hearing or deaf or anywhere in the spectrum in between, if they're using signs to communicate, they are verbal. They may not be speaking. So a non-speaking child may still be a verbal child if they're using an actual language And that's also where we might differentiate between a gesture and a.
Okay, so I wasn't distinguishing between verbal and oral, or verbal and speaking, which and that makes sense. And so
And
as
I
you can
do that
see,
just to say quickly, as a music therapist, I differentiate between a verbalization and a vocalization. A child who's vocalizing may not be verbalizing unless they're using words or signs at the same time. So I just tend to separate those things.
and as everybody can now see, Laura corrects me all the freaking time. So, that's um honestly, I
It
would
goes both ways. We help each
uh,
other learn.
I know I actually, if you're with somebody and you don't want them to correct you, then either you're perfect and you're not, or grow up. You're trying to get better, right? Isn't that why you have that person by your side to kind of smack you a little bit and just tell you, yeah, you're wrong? Which I honestly, I love. I know this sounds so ridiculous, but I love being corrected because whatever I said before, when I said it, it was wrong in the first place. I love somebody telling me, well, now you can say it right. So anyway,
And
so
so on this podcast of yours, Ian, what if I'm right?
yeah, no, not going to happen. And not on my watch. Not on my watch. This is my podcast. Yeah. So how did that? uh, Obviously, we've had a lot of shared experiences, but not all of them. How did that impact, from your perspective, parenting? And you've been doing this, teaching parents, caregivers, and children, through baby fingers, for quite some time. How does it impact parenting?
So I strongly believe that your bond with your child is tremendously increased, strengthened, positively benefited by being able to understand each other, by being willing to take the time to look at each other face to face, by just spending more time together, by, again, as a music therapist, I developed baby fingers to incorporate music. And so singing with your baby, there's something called infant directed singing where you're really singing face to face. That is an incredibly beautiful bonding opportunity. And then as you add signs, you're giving them then the language to use with you. So not only are they then understanding and taking in your language, but they have an accessible language to use. And if it turns out that your baby can't hear, they're able to access what you are singing or saying because of your signing as well. So they're being given both a receptive and an expressive language in that way. And so their frustration decreases. Now, I will say, our kids had tantrums. It doesn't get rid of them. But what it does is
I don't remember that at all. I mean, ever. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it doesn't get rid of the tantrums, but it reduces the communication related frustration. So if they sign cookie and it's not a time for a cookie, you're going to say no cookie. And they're going to go, oh, she knows what I want. She understands me, but I want it now. And they're still going to tantrum because they didn't get what they wanted, but not because they weren't understood. So I want to differentiate there that there's so many benefits in terms of the parenting. They will be less frustrated. They will be able to communicate more. You're going to understand them more. Playtime will be easier. It doesn't get rid of every challenge or issue. If they're on the playground, though, and they're starting to be mobile and they crawl away a little too far from you and then they look back, you can sign, okay, or stop, or does something hurt, or do you need help? You don't need to yell across the playground and you can understand each other. And that's incredibly beneficial.
Something that I think a lot of parents who are listening would be concerned about, and rightly so, is, hey, I'm not a deaf. This is not a deaf family. We don't have any deaf members in our family. American Sign Language is beautiful and all that, but we're not going to necessarily use it in the future, and we're not going to be able to support it in the future. Isn't this just going to delay our ability to communicate orally? because now our child has gotten much more adept and is focusing more on signing and not learning. Remember, as you know better than me, certainly, the tongue is the most complex of all organs, or muscles, I should say. And so to train it takes a lot of time. Won't this just slow them down?
Nope. So
Okay,
it
next
is a
question.
common, that's it. Uh, it is a common question and concern. So developing language and developing speech are completely separate. Your child's development of signing has nothing to do with their ability to develop speech. You're working on the language center of the brain. You're working on their motor skills in their hands. It has nothing to do with their oral motor mechanism. It will not delay it. It will,
I
it will,
understand you're saying that before you just keep going, because I understand that the capacity doesn't get delayed, but doesn't it delay the practicing so that it becomes delayed? Or does it not?
so
I mean, that's what you're the expert. You know what the data says. And to my mind, that's kind of, we can all talk about anecdotally something causing this or causing that, but yeah, the anecdotal information, that's just a nice story. I want to know what the science tells us. Is this going to be a delay in their ability to communicate orally?
the research says no. So every individual has their own personality. There will be some children who say, Mommy understands what I'm saying when I sign. I don't need to talk. Eventually, they're going to talk because some people around them aren't going to understand sign language. And because they're going to be in some situations where they're going to be excited and motivated to talk. So, yes, there's that idea of we need to practice something in order to be able to do it. But if there is no oral motor delay, and if there is an oral motor delay, it's not because they're signing.
Right.
So if there is an oral motor delay, then speech language pathology will be helpful for them. But many little ones who sign early on have such I'm sorry, I'm not thinking of the word I need right now. I can sign it, but their language development is so far advanced because of their language development that whether they have articulation issues or any other oral motor issues, it's so completely separate. So they may need practice. They may need motivation to speak, but it doesn't mean they're not able to. It doesn't mean they won't eventually start speaking probably in full sentences, because if they've been signing that long, they understand how to put language together.
I also take
So
it that in addition to the fact that they are going to they will master what they master in whatever order, but they're not likely to be raised in an environment where oral motor skills is unnecessary. So while you may be communicating with them through American Sign Language, they go to school, they go to the playground, they go elsewhere, and at those moments they realize, okay, this is not. They figure that out right away. That kid doesn't know what I mean when I go like this, or that mom or that whomever doesn't know what I mean when I do that. And so they understand that they have to communicate in two ways because they've got more than one kind of, I guess, environment where those skills are going to be valuable in different ways at different times in different places.
that's correct. In fact, I remember our doorman, Raymond, years ago, would say to Zeke, "Where's Daddy? Where's Daddy?" And Zeke was always answering him. If Daddy was at work, Zeke was signing work, and Raymond was, "Where's Daddy?" I would say, "Raymond, he's telling you, Daddy's at work." Right? So eventually they do understand that some people don't understand sign or don't understand English or whatever it might be. And so they do adapt. I want to just sort of flip that a little bit, though. It is more common for a hearing parent of a deaf child to say, is it okay for me to come to your class? Should I be signing with my child? Because so many medical professionals, doctors and audiologists are saying, don't sign with your deaf child because they will never develop speech. Well, first of all, why does a deaf child have to develop speech? They have American Sign Language. If they develop speech, great, but why is that better, right? As long as they have language. So we're really finding that hearing parents of hearing children are excited to be able to communicate with their children at any given moment, especially before they can talk, right? Deaf children should have that same opportunity from birth, whether they are aided or have technology or not. So often, more often, the question is from a parent of a deaf child. How will this benefit my child when the audiologist or the doctor is saying not to see? So we're working at Baby Fingers to educate, provide more psychoeducation to those professionals as well, for them to understand the importance of that early language and that visual language, regardless of hearing.
Right, so now let's leave the children for a moment, not unattended. Well, they're old now. I think it's okay. But
Ours are okay.
let's leave that for a moment, and um, we have um, I don't know. We both are working parents. We always have been working parents. You created Baby Fingers because, well, as we both recall, but of course, people listening have no idea, but it was a means of continuing your desire to work, because that's the way that one of the ways that you feel very productive, but also you wanted to be a very involved mom. And so creating Baby Fingers enabled you to work, and your children were at your side until they went to school like other children did, whether it was preschool or what have you. But basically, our kids grew up with two parents who I was running at that time. I was running my own business, still recording music. So I was busy. You're busy. You were at some point you were going to school. Well, actually, you were finished with school before we had the kids. But how did that work in your life? As a parent running a business, it's just love to have some insight into that for the people listening.
Yeah. I mean, it was really hard, but because my business was family and child focused, it was a little bit easier. My kids really could be with me. I did some of my early teaching with them in my arms or right next to me. Um, and ha- honestly, having you as my partner really helped because we co-parented and we supported each other in our professional endeavors at the same time. And I was able to balance my schedule in a way that I had this many classes at the times that were right for my children to be with me. And when they couldn't, I had a part time caregiver if you were at work. And I do encourage parents to seek out part time childcare if possible, whether it's a family member, a friend, or somebody that you hire, because you do need a break. You really do. That said, sometimes having the caregiver with me with the kids at work allowed me to still be around them. So parenting is hard, whether you're a working parent or a not working parent. And so always to figure out a way that you have some break or some self-care or some partnership is essential. I feel like because my children were a motivating force in developing the business that I developed 25 years ago, it allowed me to feel okay going to work because it was kind of about them at the same time. Now, the work-life balance, the separating home from work, that was a much blurrier line. And that is harder if you're in an industry where your children can come with you, or if you're a work from home parent, or you do most of your work remotely. And how do you separate whether you have childcare or not? So the lines are blurry, but I feel like my kids, I think in some way still feel like Baby Fingers is just a part of who they are.
Yeah, I mean, I get that sense also. It's almost like hegemonic. It's like it's the air that they breathe. But I'm also wondering, um, I know you have had literally thousands of children and parents in, as baby fingers, I guess customers, clients. What do you tell them about separating business from family, or if that's even possible, or if that's even not just an achievable goal, but necessarily a desirable goal?
So everybody's family works differently. And so I offer some of my own experience. I listen to what it is they're struggling with or dealing with. So I'm also a therapist. And so I try to figure out which hat am I wearing at this moment? Am I a mom? Am I teacher? Am I therapist? Am I colleague? Am I friend? Um, so I bring a little bit of all of that into everything that I do. So we talk about what is it that you're struggling with? Are you a work from home parent who happens to have this time in the day when we have a baby fingers class and you can come to it and that's a wonderful moment in your day to share with your baby, but then you have to go right back to work. So what do you do about me? So I often ask other people in our group with us, what are some things that you do for self-care, for separation? I share some of my own experiences, and then people can pick and choose and say, that might work for me, or I'd be willing to try that.
You've been doing this now for over 25 years. Um, and I'm just wondering if you've seen any shift, any change in how ASL is taught over that time.
So I think a few things. I think one of the biggest shifts in the early childhood arena is, at least those of us who believe in it strongly, is shifting away from baby sign language into sign language for babies or American Sign Language with babies. And also just continuing to, I guess, kind of combat uh, the idea that technology is a substitution for language. So there's a little bit more education around that, but there's also a lot more technology available. So it's kind of like changing with the times and having to shift based on what is out there available and what medical minds are believing in. But there is more support across the board. And so more along the lines of American Sign Language right from birth for hearing and deaf children for these various reasons.
The One of the things that I think you're most proud of, and I know I am most proud of, is all of the books that you've written, the contributions you've made on the academic contributions which you've made, as well as the books intended for children. So I would love to hear a little bit about what inspired you to write your books, what books they are, and maybe if you have any book that, by the way, I know the answer to this, just for those people who think that I'm just going to find this out. I'm just, trying to help out sounding like it. But anyway, so what I think you also have a new book that you did. So just tell us a little bit about your what inspired you to write your books and what's going on with the new one.
Sure, thank you. So what I didn't do was have them right here beside me. So you'll have to go to my website. You'll have to go to mybabyfingers.com and look at my author page. You'll see all my books right there. I have to say that I was given a gift, really, with my first books. So somebody from the New York Times came to visit a baby fingers class and wrote up something about signing with your baby and talked about baby fingers, which was really awesome. And this was 20 plus years ago. And I got a phone call from an acquisitions editor from Sterling Children's Books who said, we saw the article about you in the New York Times. Do you write children's sign language books? And I said, sure. I hadn't yet, but I could. So I said, sure, I could do that. So we started with, in 2004, I believe it was, a big book called Sign Language for Kids. A Fun and Easy Guide to American Sign Language, and it's color photos of school-age kids signing, and there's descriptions and a little bit, each chapter has a different topic, and I really had creative freedom in being able to write that and being able to work with the photographer and how the signs would look. One of the models was the photographer's son, and two of the models were our twin nieces. And then we had a brother-sister pair who had a deaf family member. And it was just such a beautiful experience that from there I said to them, I work with people of all ages, but my specialty is the early childhood. I'd love to do some board books for babies. And they said, awesome, let's do it. And so we chose what topics we would do. And my next books were a 5 board book series of infants and toddlers signing. And we did photo shoots of baby fingers, babies, including my own 2. So all of the babies and toddlers in my 5 board books had been in baby fingers classes. And it's such a beautiful keepsake for me. And so those, I don't want to say they fell into my lap. It was a lot of work, but it was collaborative. And anybody who's tried to publish a book knows that is not always the case. It is very challenging.
Well, speaking of anybody who's published a book, that kind of is a nice segue for what you've just recently done.
Yeah, well, I did just self-publish a book. So I do have one other sign language book that published through Sterling Publishers, which was an ABC book. And then it was hard to get other books published from there. And so I decided to self-publish. So I wrote a rhyming story called The Muggy Buggy Day. It's my first Adventures with Opal book. It's called Adventures with Opal, The Muggy Buggy Day. It's a wonderful rhyming storybook about a little girl who goes out on an adventure on a very hot, muggy, buggy day. And one of the things that I really love about this story is that it's a little girl who builds her confidence throughout the story and just feels free to go on adventures. And one of the other things I love about it, which actually came through some collaborative conversations with you, Ian, is that on every page, there's a thought bubble that has a question from Opal. And it was really like, how do I get Opal's voice out there? Not just her story, not just what's happening through this adventure of hers, but what's really going on in her mind is really important to share for children to get a sense of, yeah, I think about that too. That's my question too. And for adults to realize that children have curiosity and children have questions, and what might a child be thinking about during this moment? And so there's a thought bubble with a question from Opal on every page opposite the rhyme. And so again, that came from a collaboration. So the self-publishing experience is completely different. So again, you can go to my website and find it there. It's available wherever you can find books sold online. And it's such a wonderful adventure. I do love to sign it, but it just sort of sings itself. And in terms of that thought bubble, I have to say that's something that sign language provided to me, to other parents, that it provides that window into your child's thought. So in the book, I have Opal's thought bubble with her question written right there. But with my own children, I got that thought bubble because they were signing. I wouldn't have known what they were thinking otherwise because they didn't have the speech yet for me to hear it, for them to say.
Yeah, I think sometimes we forget that the fact that a child doesn't have all of the skills to communicate their inner monologue, they still have an inner monologue. It just is organized a little differently than ours. It may be more images and feelings than the symbols of language, because that's all language is it's symbolic of our feelings, of our desires, of our perspectives. But I think a lot of times we look at our children and when they're very little, and we don't realize that they've got this inner monologue going on, and they're in another world. We all do that. Everybody does it, but we just, I think, ignore the fact because they can't share that inner world very well. Obviously, sign language enables them to do that perhaps a little earlier, perhaps with a little more clarity. But however it comes across, that thought bubble represents children of all ages. As soon as they come out of the womb, there is a world outside and there's a world inside. And those two things are not just, they're not mutually exclusive. In fact, everything outside is playing on inside. And so just the idea that you're giving voice to to that inner monologue in your story, I think that's wonderful. And it's a great way of reminding parents that what they see is not all of what's there. There's a lot more inside. So, um, so I think I don't know what the traditions will be moving forward on how to, I guess, come to the end of a discussion of a conversation. Um, but just out of nowhere, nothing that I actually planned, quite frankly, we'll see, is if you had something that you could tell or that you could do right now, just one thing, and I'm not saying, I wish I had a million wishes or things like that. I'm just saying if there was one thing that you could do that might make a difference to one person or the entire universe, is there something that you might be able to, share with us that, I really wish. I know I'm putting you on the spot. I didn't prepare you on it because I just came up with the idea, but let's see if it works.
So, from parent to parent, I would say turn off your inner critic.
Mm.
You've got this. There is absolutely nothing easy about parenting. Thing.
And it gets
Maybe you
harder.
had a good pregnancy. Bigger kids, bigger problems, really. And maybe you had an easy pregnancy, maybe not. Maybe breastfeeding was great for you, maybe not. Maybe you couldn't do it. Maybe your birth, who knows? Parenting is a struggle, and you are going to criticize yourself. It's just another thing that you're going to be critical about yourself for. And however you can mute that, turn it off, breathe through it, sing louder than your inner critic is speaking, whatever it is. You don't need it. And I wish we could all turn that off. We've got this.
It just feels like it's an outgrowth of self-love, that you see yourself with all your flaws, or warts and all, and just understand that nobody is without blemishes. And I love the idea that your message with that one final question is, you got this. Have a little love for yourself while you're trying to struggle through showing and sharing that love with your children. I think quite frankly, if our children really learn that lesson from you, we've done well. So thanks. This was what a joy, what a treat for me to have my incredible wife Lora as my first guest. Don't forget, she's got what is it? Not Travels with Opal.
You don't even know?
I
Adventures.
Thank you. Just out me like that. Adventures with Opal, the Muggy Buggy Day, and also there are lots of opportunities for people who would like to work with Lora and her team at Baby Fingers. You don't just have to be in New York City. You have some other locations, but you also can be anywhere because Zoom. So take a look at mybabyfingers.com, right? I get that right?
Yes.
Thank you.
You got that right.
Okay, so take a look at mybabyfingers.com. See where the things that she writes about, that Lora writes about, that other people share on her website, and all of the opportunities, whether it's books or videos or what have you, because parenting is not something that plays well if you're an island. You need a lot of people to help you out. It's friggin' hard. So I just am so fortunate that the person who shared that responsibility with me is you. And so and not was but is, because Lord knows, yeah,
It never
it
ends.
never ends. Anyway, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for being
Thank
on.
you.
Um, I may be, yeah, even know my
Do you know the
thoughts.
name of that? What if I'm
What
right?
if I'm right? What if I'm senile? I think is what this should be called. What if I'm right? With Ian Heller. Thank you so much for being my guest, my wife, my partner, my best friend, and for being my first guest on What If I'm Right. This is Ian Heller. My show is What If I'm Right? This part of my show is Shake Your Fist. Shake Your Fist. Yeah. Shaking your fist is basically my way, and actually a friend of mine's way, of saying, how do little old me, how do I actually make an impact on all of the terrible things that are happening or the great things that I want to happen? I'm just little old me. Yeah, you know what? Shut up, okay? Start building a little self-esteem, grow a couple of balls, grow some balls here, okay? Let's get serious. Everybody can make an impact. Everybody does make an impact. It's a question of how much, and it's a question of how you go about it. Let's take, for example, the President of the United States, not the current one. Talking about the first one, George Washington. George Washington. You know, he may have been the embodiment of the strong, silent type. I don't know if it was because he was worried about getting splinters on the inside of his mouth from his wooden teeth. I don't know why, but he didn't really always have to say anything to get what he wanted. He would simply kind of look. He'd hang out in the back of the Continental Congress in his in his uniform when he was a major in the English army. And when they said, who would like to be the leader of the Continental Army? He didn't raise his hand. Oh, no, no, that wouldn't be. Everybody turns and looks at the big guy in the back and say, yo, George, I think this is for you. Oh, no, 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 no. I'm too humble to be able to do this. You know what he was doing? He was basically saying, oh, yeah, come on. No, 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 I don't want it. Please. No, 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 no. Oh, no, 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 please. No, no. Come on. He wanted that job from the very beginning. As a matter of fact, you know why he supported the revolution? Because as an American colonist, he wasn't eligible to become a general in the English army. Oh, yeah. If he had become general, no more George. That's the end of that. He goes to England, and it's like, yeah, he's on the side of the English now. So I guess we kind of got lucky in that regard. But anyway, George could get people to do things whenever he wanted, however he wanted, just by kind of looking at him. And they got scared because if George Washington, everybody knew he had a temper, but nobody got to see it very much. You could just kind of see it seething underneath his, I don't know, his alabaster skin. I don't know. Everybody was scared to death of the guy and yet admired him greatly. Not just because of the things he did, but the thing that one of the most important things he did was he controlled that incredible amount of passion, anger, frustration, being committed. He controlled it. And everybody looked, if he can control himself, this is a big guy. Maybe he's a good leader. Turned out he was perhaps the greatest leader this country has ever known. Let's talk about another president, though. And I'm kind of pointing you out, Barack Obama. Look, Whether you're liberal or conservative, there are going to be reasons why, if you really are honest, that you like the guy or dislike the guy. I know that the bias on either side makes you love or hate him, but at the end of the day, most presidents do some things that you like and other things that you don't. Obama's no exception to that. I liked a lot of the things that he did, not all of it. But here's something I'm pissed about. He's gone around just criticizing Democrats for not fighting back. Come on, show us you're tough. Fight back, Democratic Party. It's like, time out? Barry? Aren't you like the leader of the Democratic Party? I mean, we're not looking at Biden as our leader. The guy's wandering around in his slippers. He's saying, who ordered the veal cutlet? He has no idea what's going on anymore. Obama, he's still compos mentis. He knows exactly what's going on. He is the leader of the Democratic Party. And yet he's telling the Democrats to show up and argue and fight. Hello, when Washington was frustrated with the soldiers who were fleeing the soldiers for the English army, he got in front of them on his high horse and went headlong into the fray, into the battle, basically saying, people, they're all aiming for me, but nothing's hitting me. Get behind me. I'm telling you, we can win. Follow me. Follow me. Barack Obama, you want to make a change? You want to stop that guy in the White House who is absolutely gone totally batshit crazy? Don't tell me to stand up like that. I am not a former president of the United States. I'm not the leader of the opposition party. You are. You shouldn't be telling me to fight. You should be telling us, this is how you fight. I'm going to show you the fight. You want to shake your fist? Don't shake your fist at me. I'm doing the best I can given how limited my resources are, how limited my power is. You're wealthy. You're incredibly well respected. And my goodness, the gift of gab, you are one of the most eloquent speakers in my lifetime. You go forward. You do it. I'll follow. I'll lead my people, but you lead everybody. Don't tell me what I'm doing wrong. Don't tell me what else I have to do. Show me what you do and I'll follow you. Barack Obama, shake your fist. You've got the biggest fist out there. The only one that might be bigger is the guy who took your place in the White House. You're the only one who's strong enough to shake back and to actually make the ground move. Shake your fist, Barack. You don't like what you're seeing? Do something about it. Show us what to do. Don't criticize me. Don't judge me. Lead me. Teach me. Barack Obama, this shake your fist is for you. Go out there, shake your fist. We need you, but we need you to be a leader, not a cheerleader. This is Ian Heller. Don't forget to hit subscribe. You don't want me shaking my fist at you. Hit subscribe, come back, listen again, and keep the dialogue open. But shake your fist.